Good morning, and once again, welcome to Cypress Valley Bible Church. If I haven't met you personally, my name is Rorie, Patton, and I am over the youth here at Cypress Valley. I'm in my 10th year, and I'm married, and I have 3 kids, and here in a minute, you'll see how much chaos these kids bring to my life sometimes. But we're in a topic this morning called No Rest for the Weary, and before we get into what that is about and what that means, I want to share a few things with you this morning, and these are things that make you go, And I'm a weird thinker. I'm a deep thinker, and I get just these crazy thoughts in my head, and sometimes they keep me up at night. But I just want to see if any of these things might drive you crazy. They're things that make you go, Like, why do we drive on parkways and park on driveways? Does that not drive anybody else crazy in here? Drives me crazy. Why is the world's leading pencil still number 2? You know. Why are there no mirrors in the self-checkout line? This one always gets me. Why are stay-at-home moms always gone? If rabbit's feet are so lucky, what happened to the rabbit? You know? Do you think some people take marble for granted? They say 7 out of 6 people can't do math. I think it's just because they only asked 5 people. Wait, never mind. If you try to fail and fail, did you succeed? These keep me up at night, I'm sorry. If you try to fail but succeed, did you fail? And this one, you might need to ask your neighbor if you need some help with this one. If a traveling married couple have a baby in Vegas, does the baby have to stay? This stuff I think about. And then, how come born-again Christians don't have 2 belly buttons? I think that'd be awesome, right? Well, in this things that make you go, there's a few Bible verses. I've heard them my whole life growing up, but I never really dove into them until a few months ago. And it's something that Jesus said that made me go, what are you talking about? Like, what does this mean? What are you saying here, Jesus? And Jesus said this phrase, "Take my yoke upon you." And I'll be honest, that's just a weird phrase. Like, I have no idea what Jesus is talking about. What does he have in mind here? And what is this yoke? And I'll be honest, when I was reading these verses, the word yoke translated to yolk in my head, and I started thinking about eggs because I was hungry. And this would be a perfect time for me to inject some egg puns, but we don't have time. I could probably at least come up with a dozen. It would get us all out of our shell. But it's morning time, and I'm sure your brain's fried. Mine's scrambled. And so all jokes aside, what did Jesus mean when he said, take my yoke upon you? Now, when he said this, he was trying to meet a need, and it was a need of people being tired and people being weary. And we're going to see this come out as Jesus explains this to us. But I first want to see if you can relate. About 5 months ago, something like that, I taught this lesson to the youth ministry. But it was a smaller lesson, and when I taught it, I really wasn't dealing with this issue of being tired and being burdened and being weary. And it wasn't until about a month and a half or 2 months ago when I really started diving into these passages. They really started to help me, and I mean, in a big way, and I was just excited to come and share them with you. But I want to see if you can relate to this. This is a little snapshot of the past month and a half to 2 months of my life. It's just been absolutely chaotic. As far as just normal living goes, school had just started back, and there were long lines in both schools, and we're trying to get the kids to this school, and we're trying to get in another long line and get the kids to this school. And finally, my wife jumped in, and she started taking 2 to one school. I started taking 1 to the other, but it's just stressful, and it was chaotic. About that time, my daughter's dance started back up, and so I had to be dad, mom, and get the kids, and then get home, and then try to figure out supper, and then try to get her dressed up and make her look cute, and I'm not good at that. And then I have to get her to dance. And then our boys started golf camp, and so now it's the same thing on another night, trying to get home, figure out supper, get the boys ready to get them to golf. And then on top of all that, our youngest son got COVID, and so then I'm trying to be at home with him while he is quarantining, and it's one of those things like I just don't need this right now. We get him healthy, get him back to school, and then our oldest son got a stomach bug, and so I'm right back at home with him while he's sick. After a week goes by, it's time to send home all that amazing homework. Can we just make a vote today to get away with homework for the rest of our entire lives? It brings up so much stress and drama in the house. And then they say, oh yeah, I have that project that's due tomorrow that they just told you about. So now you're doing all these things for a project. And then I had some dental issues pop up. And again, it was just one of those, I don't need this right now. And so I'm going to the dentist to appointments. Then I have to go and get a procedure done. One tooth rejected the procedure, and it was really, really, really painful. I had to go back and I had to have some more things done. And then I had some really, really, really serious meetings I had to be a part of. I had some really, really, really serious calls that I had to be a part of. And that's just life in general. Then talk about work. I was planning. Let's see here, if we're gonna, it's not wanting to jump, there we go. I was planning this sermon, a lot of work and a lot of studying and a lot of detail goes into that. I was planning Going Deeper, which is our Wednesday night program that we have in the youth building. It's been absolutely chaotic and crazy this year. We keep setting records on attendance. This last Wednesday was our biggest night, 113 students. And then we're planning Student Life on, thank you. Planning Student Life on Sundays, which they just had that first service, and I'm trying to plan sermons and series and intertwining those somehow. And then it's always like working out volunteers. We have to have people working Life Bucks, which make frappuccinos and smoothies. We have to have people in the cafe making food and drinks for Wednesday nights. Have to have people there watching the kids, and so you're constantly working with volunteers. I was working on a video for the youth ministry while also working on a video for a commercial for here for the church. Meanwhile, preparing for fall in general, scheduling and series and activities and outings that we're going to do in the fall and in the winter. And then on top of all of that, this may not be stressful to you, but I'm the one that designs the t-shirts and the hoodies for Student Life, and I'm a perfectionist and I try to get everything right and I want them to look good. And so all that was going on. And you wouldn't believe it, but we're already planning camp for next summer, even though we just got back. It's a whole year in advance. There's a lot of things that go in that are involved in that. We're getting ready to announce that to get ready for the next summer. Also planning the retreat, which normally is in the fall. Looks like we're going to push it back to the winter. There's a lot of planning that goes into that. Then I had a lot more serious phone calls, a lot more serious meetings, and that is life and work. And I wonder if you can relate to that, where you're just busy and it's chaotic and you're burdened and we just get tired and we get weary. And that's what happened to me. I was busy, I was tired, and I was weary. When I first taught this lesson, I wasn't really struggling or dealing with this. This second time I started diving into these passages, they just really started connecting to me and helping me. And so I wonder if you're here this morning, you feel busy, you feel tired, you feel weary, you feel drained, you feel exhausted. Jesus is speaking to you when he says, "Take my yoke upon you." Now, and on top of all that, there's another thing that we have to consider. If you've believed in Jesus for everlasting life, there's a lot of things that we're supposed to be doing for Jesus on top of life and work and things like that. We're supposed to be praying, and we're supposed to be reading our Bibles. We're supposed to be going to church. You did well with that. You get a check for that one this morning. We're supposed to be serving people. We're supposed to love others. We're supposed to forgive others. We're supposed to, there's so many commands. I just chose this one, honor our fathers and mothers. There's some things that we're told not to do, like don't be anxious, don't get stressed, don't get worried. And meanwhile, on top of all that, while you're dealing with everything, you're also not supposed to sin. And it gets hard. It gets difficult. We have a lot going on as people trying to do life. And that's where this phrase comes in. Today's message is no rest for the weary. Now, this is a really sad statement. And maybe you've said it, maybe you've heard people say it, no rest for the weary. It is really sad and it's really depressing. There's no hope in this phrase. There's no hope in this thinking. This thinking is no matter how hard life gets, no matter what life throws at you, you just got to figure it out. Doesn't matter how tired you are. Doesn't matter how exhausted you are. You go to sleep, you wake up, you do it the next day. There's no rest for the weary. And it's very depressing because there's no hope there, because there is rest for the weary, and we're going to find out about that this morning. Now, here in America, this is the dominant phrase that we use, no rest for the weary. In other countries, they use no rest for the wicked. And for time's sake, I don't have time to explain how they originated and why the words changed. I don't have time. But what you need to know is no matter if someone says no rest for the wicked or if someone says no rest for the weary, they have the same thought in mind. It's the same idea. Just go through life, whatever it throws at you, you just got to deal with it and move on. Now, the reason why I bring up no rest for the wicked is because when I was researching this and studying this, I found some song lyrics, and I don't know anything about this band. I don't know anything about this song, but the lyrics in the chorus were just extremely profound. And I want to share them with you because I want you to see what this phrase means. And so I want you to see an artist explain what no rest for the wicked means, because it's really depressing. This artist says, "Oh, there ain't no rest for the wicked. Money don't grow on trees. I got bills to pay. I got mouths to feed. There ain't nothing in this world for free. I know I can't slow down, I can't hold back, though you know I wish I could. Oh, there ain't no rest for the wicked until we close our eyes for good." And this type of thinking is just sad. No matter what, you got bills to pay, you got to feed people, you have to get up, you have to work, you have to grind, and then, oh well, go to sleep. Another problem comes in, oh well, go to sleep. There's no rest for the weary. And how long is this supposed to last? The writer says, until we close our eyes for good. No hope, no rest until you die. Just get over it. And that's extremely depressing. And so that's the topic we're going to consider this morning, is no rest for the weary. And if you've come in feeling this way, I really hope and pray this connects with you, because this is an awesome thing that helped me, and I want to share it with you. Now, these we're going to consider 3 verses this morning, and that phrase, "take my yoke upon you," is in the middle of those verses. And these come from Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30, and they're in your bulletin if you're hanging on to one of those. And first, I'm going to read the 3 verses, and then we're going to go back and we're going to break them down one phrase at a time, because they're just loaded with information. Now, before I read these verses, I want to give 2 disclaimers that are really, really important. The first disclaimer is when Jesus says these verses, when he was living on this earth, and he says these verses, he says these statements, he was speaking to a large crowd. And in that crowd, there would have been believers, people that have believed in Jesus for everlasting life, and there would have been unbelievers, people that have not yet believed in Jesus for everlasting life. But he was still inviting all of them and giving them the opportunity to find rest, because Jesus can give rest. However, one must believe in Jesus for everlasting life first before they can truly partake in this rest. So that's the first disclaimer. Second disclaimer that I want to give is these verses are found in the book of Matthew. And when Matthew was writing his gospel, he was writing to believers. He assumes that when you read the book of Matthew that you already have everlasting life. And so for teaching purposes this morning, the reason why I share that is I'm teaching these verses this morning assuming that you already have everlasting life. And if you do, then this rest can be true for you immediately. And so I wanted to share that first. But here are the verses. Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." It's a mouthful, it's a lot, it's confusing, and it just put me on this spiral to figure out what Jesus is talking about here. Now, we're gonna break these down phrase at a time. The first phrase that I wanna look at is the issue, the problem, the need that he is trying to meet, and that is this right here. All you who are weary and burdened. So if you came in here this morning, or if you're feeling weary, you're feeling burdened, you're feeling exhausted and tired, and the world's got you down, Jesus is speaking to you this morning, all you who are weary and burdened. And the very first thing that Jesus says to do is to come to me. Come to me. Let me help you. I want to help you. I know life is hard. I know life is difficult. Come to me and let me help you. And I'll be honest, I'm really guilty of this one sometimes. My job is for Jesus. I do a lot of things for Jesus. And sometimes at the end of the day, I've done so many things for Jesus that day, and I stop and realize, you know what? I didn't do anything with Jesus that day. And so this is an invitation to include Jesus into life, into work, into the commands that we're supposed to follow, the works that we're supposed to do. It's bringing Jesus on board. What would you have me do here, Jesus? What does Jesus think about this? Help me with this, Jesus. It's an invitation. Jesus is saying, I'm here to help you. And he says, come to me. I want to help. And if we come to him, he says, I will give you rest. Now, this isn't a nap. This isn't an extra hour or 2 hours of uninterrupted sleep at night or anything like that. Jesus defines this type of rest and what he's talking about. And he says it is rest for your souls. It is a spiritual rest, and it is a rest that only Jesus can give. And over the past couple of months, I've experienced this rest, and that's why I'm very excited to share it with you. It is a spiritual rest that only he can give. Because when we're going through life, and especially if we're going through life on our own, and we're trying to handle all these difficult tasks and try to handle these difficult things at hand, and we're not including Jesus in the process, it is our spirit is in turmoil. Our spirit has unrest. And so Jesus has a rest for our souls, and it's an amazing thing. Then we get to our verse, take my yoke upon you. And I'm telling you, I've heard these verses my whole entire life, and it just doesn't make sense. I just didn't know what Jesus had in mind here. And I finally have it figured out, and it's just an amazing thing. But you may not use the word yoke. I know that I don't use the word yoke until I started reading these verses, and maybe you know what a yoke is. Maybe you've used a yoke, but they're really, really popular in farming and in agriculture, and this is a yoke. And it's like this piece of lumber or wood, and it stretches out, and there's 2 rings on each side of it, and that's where they will put an animal's head through each side of the rings. And what they do is they yoke 2 animals together. Typically, they yoke oxen together, and there's 1 ox on one side, 1 ox on the other side, and they're connected together. And the purpose of this is they're going to pull together. They're going to work together. They can pull a wagon. They can pull a load. They can plow a field, and they're working together. They're walking side by side. They're walking in the same direction, and they're pulling and working together. And what's really neat, as I was researching this, they would typically yoke a younger, smaller, not strong ox with a bigger, stronger, wiser, experienced ox. And the reason why they would do this is because the younger one will learn from the older one. The older one will teach the younger one. The older one will guide the younger one. The older one helps teach when to stop, when to pull, when to turn left, when to turn right. And the older, stronger one is pulling most of the work, pulling more of the work, which helps the younger ox to do his job. And that's exactly what Jesus wants for me and you. Jesus says, and learn from me. Jesus wants us to yoke with him in life. He's comparing himself to that older, wiser, stronger ox. He wants to guide us. He wants to help us. He wants to give us strength. He wants to help pull the load. He wants to help pull the burdens and help carry the burdens. And in that process, we're walking with him. We're talking with him. We're going in the same direction with him. And he is guiding our lives. He's guiding us. And in that process, we are learning from him. And then he goes on to say, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. And he's not just this mean, angry boss with us. He knows there's work to do. He knows there's life to do. And he is gentle with us. He knows how hard life is. He came and he did life on planet Earth. And he knows he's gentle. He understands. He gets it. And he wants to help. He's forgiving. He's merciful. He's gracious. And he understands how difficult it is. He's gentle and he's lowly in heart. He's mild. He's meek. He's understanding. And he's there to lend a hand. And he's not getting upset about it. And he's there to help us do the work that we need to do. And so when we come to Jesus and we yoke with him and we learn from him and he's guiding our lives and he's guiding our choices, when we're yoked with him and going through life with him, Jesus says, you will find rest for your souls. And it's an amazing thing. It's not going to make your problems go away. It's not going to make your schedule change in a miracle or anything like that. It is just a spiritual rest because you are allowing Jesus to help you. You are depending on his strength to get you through things, to help you with things. And when we do that, we are finding rest for our souls. And he concludes by saying this, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus has asked us to do some hard things in life, some difficult things, some really difficult things. And sometimes we don't want to do them. And Jesus is saying, if you do them with me, it's actually easier than you realize if you're letting me help you and you're relying on my strength. Let me carry some of that load for you. Let me help you. My burden is light. It's just like that little ox pulling with the big one. The load is a little bit lighter for that smaller ox because the big one is pulling the load. And this is what Jesus wants for us, and it's an awesome thing. Now, if you aren't yoked with Jesus, if you aren't doing life with Jesus, if you aren't connected with Jesus and walking with him and growing with him and learning from him, this list that I showed you a minute ago, it's virtually impossible. If you're not yoked with Jesus, you're not really praying, you're not really connecting with him that way. It's not on your radar. We're not really reading our Bibles, and this is where we can really, really learn from him. You're here today, you came to church, you get a check mark, but are you really here today? Were you coming in here to connect with Jesus, to learn about him, to grow in him, to connect with him? We're going to have a hard time serving people if we're not yoked with Jesus. We're going to have a hard time, this one's really difficult, loving people if we're not relying on Jesus' strength and help to love someone. We're going to have a hard time forgiving someone without the strength of Jesus. It's so easy to just go our own way and hold a grudge and not forgive someone. We're going to have a hard time. This is just one of many commandments, but we're going to have a hard time following a command if we aren't yoked with Jesus. Don't be anxious. Don't be worried. Don't be stressed. Good luck if you're not yoked with Jesus. We need his help. We need his perspective for things like that. And don't sin. If you go through life not yoked with Jesus, sin will just overcome you. We don't have help. We don't have strength. We don't have his guidance to overcome sin. And life can end up being a train wreck. This phrase, no rest for the weary, it is just a really, really, really sad phrase. There's no hope and there's nothing. It's just sad. You just got to go through life, keep grinding, keep doing what you're doing. Doesn't matter. Go to sleep, wake up, do it the next day. And I hope maybe you don't use this phrase anymore or share with someone if someone says that phrase around you, because we have our bottom line today. There is rest for the weary when you come to Jesus for help. There is rest for the weary when you come to Jesus for help. He's there. He wants to help you. He wants to guide you. He wants to help carry the load. He knows life is hard. And I want to share two examples of this just so you can see it in real life. And I think it connects the dots on what this whole topic is all about. I'm in my 10th year here, which means I've graduated 10 groups of seniors from student life. I just graduated the group just a few months ago in May. And Russ Perry used to be the youth pastor here. Now he's over adult ministries here at the church, but he was a youth pastor for many, many years. And Russ has graduated many, many seniors. And we were talking in his office about this topic and about these verses. And one thing that we share in common, one thing that we see when students graduate student life and they're yoked with Jesus and they're connected with Jesus and everything's going great, and they graduate student life and they take the yoke off and they go and they decide to do life on their own. And we've seen some that don't end badly. They're not tracking with Jesus, but they're not necessarily having any issues. But we've also seen some that have had some major issues, major consequences. And 5 years pass, 7 years pass, 8 years pass, something like that. This student, which would be a young adult now, decides to come back to Cypress Valley and walks through those doors out there for the first time in many years. And Russ will go to them, the ones that he knows, or I'll go to the ones that I know, and you hug them and you're happy they're back, and I'm so excited to see you, and what made you come back? And they had a connection here, they had some relationships here. They just decided to take the yoke off and do life on their own. And it is like clockwork, the answer that Russ and I get when we ask this question. The answer is normally always, I'm tired. I'm worn out. Life is just beating me down. Nothing's going right. Nothing's going good. I'm tired and I need Jesus. And that is literally the idea behind all of this. And they're coming back to Cypress Valley because they're coming back to put the yoke on to do life with Jesus again. Second story that I want to share, which I think it was amazing because it just happened. And I was literally in the middle of studying these verses and they're on my mind and I'm thinking about the route that I want to take the sermon, and I get a phone call and I answer it, and it's a kid that graduated from student life, and he spent many years at student life at this church, many years with me. We went on camp outs and mountain trips and Camp Eagle trips and retreats, and we were really, really close. And he graduated student life and he took the yoke off and he decided to do life on his own. And it was just one train wreck after another, one consequence after another, one bad mistake after another. And he knew he wasn't doing right. He even told himself, I need to get back with Jesus, but he refused to. 2.5 years passed by, and he was just at rock bottom. And he called me to say, I'm giving you an update. He said, about 6 months ago, he said, I know that I needed to connect with Jesus again. He's like, life just beat me up and stomped on me, and I need Jesus' help. And so he lives out of town. I told him I was going to share this morning. I told him he's the poster child for this topic. And he started going to church again. He started reading his Bible again. He started praying again. He started hanging out with other believers and getting involved in that. And he said, my problems didn't go away and a lot of things didn't change. He said, I just feel so much better. I just found something. And I was like, you found spiritual rest. Your soul is no longer in turmoil because you're doing life with Jesus. You're connected with him. And he was like, things are just so much better for me right now. And I told him that I was going to share that this morning. The whole idea, there's no rest for the weary. Again, it's just a sad topic. There is rest for the weary when you come to Jesus for help. And if you're sitting here this morning and you feel like you're yoked with Jesus, you feel like you're connected and you're walking with him and talking with him and you're relying on him, I'm begging you to keep the yoke on and don't take the yoke off. If you're here this morning and you're not sure if you ever put it on or you ever gave Jesus a try with life, Jesus is inviting you to yoke with him so he can give you spiritual rest because he knows life is hard. There is rest for the weary when you come to Jesus for help. Next week, hope you show up for Russ Perry's message. It's on the life of Jonah. Russ is kind of doing like this 4-week series on this topic, but he's doing them with breaks in between. So he did session 1 a few weeks ago. This is going to be session 2. And so make sure you come for that next week. If you missed session 1, I encourage you to go online and watch it. It was a really good message, and it'll help you stay in the flow with the life of Jonah. I hear it's going to be a whale of a tale. I'll pray for you and pray for all of us, and you guys can head out. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day. Just thank you for this very important topic. It has helped me big time, and I just pray that it helps somebody here this morning. Thank you for this rest that we can find in Jesus, and I just pray that all of us will choose to yoke with Jesus, to do life with Jesus, to depend on him, to depend on his strength, so we can let him help us with all the things that we have to do with life. Life is hard enough alone. We definitely need Jesus' help. We love you. Thank you so much for loving us. Amen.